Are you ready for the next market we're entering into? Are you ready to have not only the success you've had, and was that based on the marketplace or based on something you did, but are you ready to have the kind of success that many had during this last blow up, amazing market in the future, in the market that we're not so certain about? Are you ready for success in any market? Well, listen, it's not about the market. It's always about you. And today I want to talk about this idea of innovation into domination. And a big part of that is discovering how you can change no matter what's going on out there. I was teaching a class today, and in there I was talking about the fact that there's an economy, public facing, an economy, a national, an international economy, but there's a personal economy. And what are you doing to impact that piece? So that's what we're going to talk about today, innovation into domination. I'm going to share the screen with you and tell you a quick story about somebody that I never knew, but I love his story. Gentleman by the name of Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie was the wee little Scotsman who built an entire steel industry, just became one of the magnates of that era, and became rich beyond riches. And in fact, had set a goal as an early man, a young man to an early man, not a caveman, but an early young man, had set a goal to become wealthy. And then his goal was take the first half of his life, become wealthy, second half of his life, become so wealthy that he was spending the second half giving it all away. His fortune became so big, he couldn't give it all away. And to this day, of course, we've got Carnegie Centers and Carnegie this and Carnegie Hall and libraries and all kinds of things, all of that coming from this man. His idea, though, was he had this idea about tearing the factory down. You're tearing your factory down. Well, in his era, his case, what it amounted to was this. He had steel mills, giant plants, steel plants, and they were building steel. And of course, they would then build another one and another one. When they built the next one, if it was several years later, there were new innovations, new things, new technologies that made that one better, faster, more efficient, more productive, more profitable. And of course, then there was the thought, well, why don't we go back and retrofit? That was normal. You would retrofit old offices, plants, stores with new modern technology. We see it done all the time. And the challenge was they discovered that in the numbers, they could retrofit and get some bump, but they would never get the same kind of results they got from new factories. So he did the numbers, ran the numbers, and found out that if he were to tear a factory down after 5 years of solid production, down to the ground, literally down to the ground, and then rebuild, and it would take 18 months, give or take, to build that new plant with the new upgraded, updated materials and all the things that would make it more efficient, that over the next 5 years, they would get more productivity, more results out of that than they would have to make, but by the way, to make up, more than make up for the costs and all of that, and to make up for the lost productivity, that they were much more efficient. And that was the policy, that in the Carnegie Steel Company, they would tear the factories down after 5 years, rebuild them from the ground up, and create a new plant where that one had been. So here's what I want to ask you. When was the last time you tore your factory down to the ground and rebuilt it from scratch? Because my personal opinion is, my observation of the industry is, we're almost always grabbing something new and bringing it into our existing factory. It's called retrofitting, right? And it's exactly what he found. You can get some better results, but it's never going to be the same as what's possible, because here's the question you have to face. If you were to build your business today, different than you would have built it back when you started, which could have been 2 years ago or a year ago or 5 years ago. It also could have been 15 or 20 years ago or 25 or 30 years ago. And so the question is, have you really renovated? I mean, completely innovated, torn it down to the factory, started over again. And when did you do that? Most of the time, we are adding on, adding on, adding on, adding on. And it's a little bit like a house where you take that main structure and suddenly what you're doing is you're doing, a back patio, then you're bolting on a new room, then you're redoing the bathroom and extending it a little, and you end up with this house that looks like it's been pieced together instead of what's the flow if you had torn it down and built it from scratch to be the most beautiful home exactly the way you want it, not sort of retrofitted with what you need. So I want to offer that to you as a thought for your business, because this to me is where the real possibilities and opportunities are today to completely renovate and innovate, because today we're seeing that technological advances are moving so quickly that we have a chance to do things differently. In fact, one of the observations I made throughout history of real estate, I've been around 40 years, that we have people who come into the industry today that are growing faster, will in 1, 2, 3 years be in places where agents who have been around for 10 or 15 years have never gotten. Volume, deal count, all of that. Why? Because they're coming in and thinking differently based on how it is today, what these possibilities are, not based on how it used to be. And those possibilities just gotten a little better, a little better, a little better. We call it incremental growth. And if you're just growing a little bit at a time, you'll never get where you could have gotten if you come in with new ideas. So you're watching companies come in and displace old companies. You're watching people come in and displace old people that have let themselves get obsolete. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. So I'm sharing this with you. You get to see Andrew Carnegie there. I want to take you over to, of course, this is from innovation to domination, creating success from the ground up, not by adding on, but from the ground up, new, tear it down. If I were to start over again today, what would I do differently? That's going to be the foundation for all of it. And I want you to look at a book and pick this up. Audible, is a book. What got you here won't get you there. Great aha, great awareness. Of course, what got you to this point, generally speaking, has maxed out. It limits out. And then we're like, well, how do I get to 2x or 3x or 5x? You don't do it by doing what you've done up to now 3 times faster or 5 times faster. You don't do that. You don't do it by getting 3 or 5 times more of what you're doing now. You can't do that. Most of you would die, just exhaustion, sheer exhaustion. You can't do 3x effort, 5x effort. What you can do is plan a whole new way of operating. And so for those of you that are in growth mode, this is where you need to go. What got you here won't get you someplace else that's way beyond where you have been. And along with, those new opportunities comes the new challenges. And one of those, of course, we talk marketing all the time, is to get out of the blue or the red ocean where everybody is. This is the way we've always done things, and go over there where we're in the new ocean, the blue ocean, if you will, and where we are playing the game where nobody else is playing. We win. We win. Won again. That's me again, winning, hashtag winning, because there's nobody else competing with us. And when we get into that blue ocean stuff, what we start to see is we can grow bigger. We're not, crowded in by so many people doing the same stuff. We're not thought of as, one of those. We start to really separate ourselves. And that's what innovation is going to be all about. So let's talk about this. Change creates possibilities. And with new possibilities comes opportunity. So the possibilities are there, but are you taking advantage of them? Are you seeking them out? Are you seeing them? Or are you blinded to them because you're so busy doing it the way it's always been? These don't seem relevant or possible, or you're not even seeing them to judge them. And I remember saying about a friend of mine who has done incredibly well for himself, built a very, very large and successful company. I used to say about him, he sees dots most people don't see. And what that means is he had references that were different. He had more possibilities in front of him. He could see how to connect this dot with this dot and what that could do. And most of us were like, I don't see the dots. And that's the difference, right? We want to get to that place where we can see what's possible, see what's in front of us, and then reconnect those dots to make up something completely different. With that in mind, I have two questions for you. First of all, what opportunities do you have? What opportunities exist? What are you seeing in new people? And you go, wow, I don't know what they're doing, but they're really doing something different. What are they doing? They're moving so much faster. Wow, from what I hear, that agent's only been around a year, 2 years, 3 years. And look at what they're doing. What is it they're doing? And is what you're doing hindering you, completely stopping you from having any chance at all to do that? The second question is, what opportunities can you offer? What things do you have access to that you can offer to a client? What things can you do today that you could never do before that you can offer through your services, that you can offer as a lead generator, that you can do today? And in fact, we're in an era where giving away material, just giving away stuff, is part of the way of becoming an influencer, where people go, I like him or her, I like who they are, I like what they stand for, and I've already chosen them, even though I'm not in a choosing mood right now, even though I'm not in a position where in real estate I'm ready to buy or sell. That's my agent. And the way that they're getting there is by being an influencer at a much higher level, information flow, just constantly sharing with people things that are going to make a difference in their lives. So that's what we want to do today, is think about what opportunities are there. What opportunities are there? And we're watching all kinds of different things, mostly, by the way, coming from outside the industry or with new people coming in who are bringing knowledge of social media, of marketing funnels, of technology from other places coming in. They grew up with this stuff, and at 20 some, 30 some years old, moving into real estate, going, well, why don't you do it this way? This would be so much more, it would make so much more sense. And we're going, no, that's not the way we do it. We've been doing it this way for 40 years. So we want to make sure that we're looking at all the possibilities, those opportunities, and then what opportunities can you offer? And I want you to just make a list. Like, you could turn the video off right here and go stop and go, what kinds of opportunities are there? Markets, technology, like just make a list of, like, you could even do categories. Technology, what are all the opportunities there? And, markets, what are the markets that are available? There are things we couldn't get to in the past. Like, I remember back in the 80s, 90s, maybe even the early 2000s, before the internet had really taken over, that, your only option was traditional farming. We were going to get people, or maybe our phone database, it wasn't, or like our Rolodex would be our database. And we went, okay, so our only way of marketing is get on the phone or send mailers, or maybe advertise. Today, we've got so many opportunities. So write them down, write them in columns, and just figure out, like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Not what can't I do? What can I do? What's possible? And then what opportunities can you offer? What things can you do for people that you've never offered before, but you're seeing people do it? You're kind of getting your cage rattled. You're sort of thinking, what if I did? What if I did? Yeah, what if? Play the what if game and make a list of things you could offer. So again, stop the video if you need to, make the list right now, and you can turn it back on in a few seconds. In the meantime, I will continue to teach, and you can decide when you want to get all this, but I want you to not just learn, but to do from this. So opportunities are straight ahead. They're right in front of you. They're everywhere. The possibilities are endless. People are doing more volume, more deals today than has ever been thought possible. There's an agent in North Texas right now that's doing over 5,000 units a year. Now, that's never been thought of, but he's been doing that for a number of years. And by the way, not a spring chicken, somebody who's just innovated and watched what's possible and created a different way of doing business. So I want you to really think about all those possibilities. And today we need to get into reinvention. Innovation, reinvention. Remember, innovation to domination. Where are your weaknesses that could be exploited? So if we're going to look at the marketplace, where are your weaknesses that somebody else could be better than, could take over from, because they're doing something more innovative, more today than you are? Where are your weaknesses? I mean, I remember coming back into my marketplace and saying to a few close friends, I feel like I could easily get obsolete. My age, I'm not a technology guy, although have become much more so. I'm not, there's a lot of things I wasn't because I didn't have to be. We weren't in that time frame. So I had to learn late. Other people were born, raised in it, and then come up through it. And it's very natural, very normal. And I recognized, that it wasn't age, it was, longevity, and where was my learning coming from? And could I keep up with? That was a weakness. I've overcome a lot of that, right? We've certainly come a long, long way. We've got a very large company. We're growing like a weed. Everything's fantastic. And then, of course, how would you beat you? That is one of the magic questions of all times. How would you beat you? Because, by the way, if you don't displace yourself, if you don't create a new model for yourself to beat your old model, somebody else is doing this. Somebody else is building that. And you're going to wake up one day and going, what happened? Remember, 3 kinds of people: those who make things happen, watch things happen, and wonder what happened. That's what you're going to end up doing if you don't figure out how to beat yourself. So when I say this, shut off the video, close that down, get your notes out, your journal, and write down what are my weaknesses? Where do I really need to shore up to get people to help me, to get somebody as an asset that can cover that? Where do I need support and help? What are my weaknesses that somebody else could exploit? And then second part, how would you beat you? What's the new model of you if you weren't so stuck in, well, that's not, I've got so much invested. I've got so many things that I've always done. I have so many marketing materials, so much stuff I have to reprint, so much stuff, like, forget it. What would you do to beat you? Look at the purity of it. Stop the video if you need to. Otherwise, let's move on. And that is, the opportunity here is really about what we can be and what we will be. Now, along with that, I want to say this. It's not in how we preserve. And this is the real secret. It's not in how we preserve what was and how it's always been, we've had it, right? It's not about let's preserve that. I see so many people like, well, we're losing the purity of our business. We're losing the way we've taken care of people. How we take care of people is very different today. Look at every industry. Service looks different. So next, the opportunity is what we can be, right? What we can be. What can we grow? How big can we be? What's it look like to be successful today? And by the way, success is always measured through your own filters, what's important to you. However, I will say this. So often people are gauging success through their own filter of what they've seen other people do. So they go, I wouldn't want to work that hard. I'd like to be that successful, but I don't want to work that hard. So I don't want to be that successful, right? So we're making judgments based on other people's experiences of how they've been extremely inefficient and achieve results, but we wouldn't want to give up our life like that. We wouldn't want to be away from our kids like that. We'd like to be at all the soccer games or baseball games or whatever. We've made judgments about that based on the biases we have about what that must mean. It's like people who tell me, when they were raised in families and, rich people they must be crooks, or salespeople must be a certain way. So then we grow up with those thoughts of business owners, salespeople, shysters, whatever. Those are the biases. Then we go, well, I wouldn't want to be one of those. So remember that when you see out there the opportunity and what you're witnessing in other people, don't judge it. Go, that's what I want. I want to be more like that. I want to have more of that. I want to have more vacations, more time off, more balance, more time with family, all of that, and lots more income. And in fact, I want to triple, quadruple, 5 times my income. So don't settle, step into, and know that it's possible. There are people doing way more than that and who have a life. Second part to this is, it is not about how we preserve what's always been, the way it's always been, what we had in the past, right? What we had, holding on to. And I'm going to talk about another book in just a few minutes. And it's really one that reflects on this, but it really comes down to, in companies, we talk about culture. And even in your life, you've established a culture. a way of operating, things that you do, things you don't do. And what's interesting is when we want to make changes, then the old culture wants to hang on to the friends that we've always had, the way it's always been, the things we always did, right? Well, if we hang on and eat the same things, drink the same things, work out as little or as much as we did, have the same, if we do the same things, we're going to get the same result. If we want to change result, we have to change the things, which means we have to be willing to give that up. So it's not in preserving how it was, what we had. It's a matter of what's new, what's possible. All right. So that said, let's keep moving. And here's the book, High Velocity Culture Change. So this is one of my favorite books now, usually for leaders, and mostly for managers, leaders of groups. I'm calling you a leader in the sense that you lead your own life. You lead perhaps a family, you lead maybe a community, you lead, if nothing else, transactions, probably working with a transaction coordinator, maybe some outside virtual help. Like you have a team, right? You have something, you have a lender, you have a title person, you have an attorney, those are all part of your team. So as you're managing your world, I want you to look at this book called High Velocity Culture Change. By the way, I can't turn this sideways, but it's so skinny. There's only about 35 to 40 pages. It's an easy read. It's got some incredible principles. But why am I talking about it at all in this particular situation? And the reason is because when we want to change something, it's always about leaving something behind, right? Or leaving something, I want to do it this way so you can see it that way, leaving something behind, moving towards something in the future. And it's that unwillingness, the old phrase, you can't get to second base unless you take your foot off first. You can't get home unless you run the three bases, right? You've got to be willing to let go of the old in favor of the new. And of course, we've already talked about Carnegie, tear it down to the ground. Just be willing to drop everything and go, wow, what would I do now? How would I start now? Let's do a 1 week study of the biggest agents in the country and figure out what they're doing. Look at all their styles. We don't have to agree to any one of them and go, I'm going to take the very best of these things. Like they're not even doing it all right. They're not doing it all right, but they're doing pieces. I'm going to manufacture the coolest real estate business ever made because I'm starting today. All right. So with that in mind, I'd really love to have you read this. It's an easy read. It's, very affordable. Order the book, get it, and read that. Now, here's where we want to go. Here's some questions for reinvention. Really important. Go through each one of these. And I'd like to stop the video or have you stop the video. I won't stop teaching, but I would love to have you stop the video and answer the questions, right? One by one by one by one. Take a notebook, take your journal out and start really writing down, because this is where the innovation is going to come from. These questions will create a different way of thinking, starting with, by the way, how could we be? What could we be? Sorry, what could we be? What could we be? If we weren't this, what could we be? If we weren't this small, how would we be? If we weren't producing this, what could we be? What could we accomplish? And I'm using the we, the I. Doesn't matter if you're a team or a single or whatever it is. How could I be bigger than where I am today? Here's a great question. Who do I need to be different from who I am being today to achieve what I want to achieve? Who do I need to be inside to achieve more, right? Who do I need to be inside me? What's the belief systems? What are the hurts, the story that we tell ourselves? What are the things that we hold back on? Where do we limit ourselves by having some imaginary, well, I wouldn't want to go that far, wouldn't want to be that much, wouldn't want to give that, because there's some limit in our brain about scarcity versus abundance, et cetera. So who do I need to be different from who I am today to get what I want, to have all that there is? Number 3 is, if this industry didn't exist, but you could look around and go, wow, there's buyers that seem to want to sell property, and there's sellers who seem to want to sell property, and nobody's figured out how to make this happen. I mean, you got to know at some point in time, in the early days, there were people that had real estate, and somebody would come along and say, sir, I'd like to buy a piece of your land. I'd like to have a place to build my home. And there was no realtor. There was purely an agreement, a handshake, some exchange of money, or some sort of services, and the deal was done. So there haven't always been realtors, but since there have been, how would, in fact, you build that business today? It's a really great question. You journal on that for a few minutes. Read some books that I'm going to give you. A couple of them you've already gotten, and now a third one coming. But read those, get bigger ideas, think through the filter of what's possible in the world, not in real estate, possible in the world. Listen, some of you know me, go back as far as my Hobbs Herder days, our company that we had for many, many years, leader in the field, huge training company. What we did was we took Madison Avenue, verifiable marketing principle, things that had already been done, and we learned them, put them in the context of realtor, taught realtors how to do that, and people went, wow, you're a genius. So if you take things that are common in the world, that are happening in technology, that are happening in other industries, and you go, how can I use that? What would I do with that? How can I use that? And bring that all together to create. My question is, what would you do with this business if you were starting from that place? Number 4, how can I contribute in new ways? In what way can I give more to the consumer? In what way can I give more in services? In what way can I give more content? Good question. In what way can I give more value than I've ever done before? In what way is that possible? Because of technology advancements, availability of information, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, finally, how do we bring our message in new ways that will last forever? Of course, I'm leading you a little bit, not just now, and that happens to be in written form and video form. Those are things that will last for a long time. The internet is filled with those things. And so again, how can you become a contributor? How can you put yourself out there in video that is permanent, that instead of the old days, one-to-one, I'm going to knock on your door, I'm going to have a one-to-one, that I'm one to many. I can knock on your mind and be one to many in my services, one to many, and we don't have to be limited in our incomes. Okay, so 5 questions. Stop in between, write them down. I'll leave this up for a second here and just freeze it, and then just go answer these questions. All right, so let's move on, because here's my final book recommendation in this session. It's called The Future is Faster Than You Think. It's written by my friend Peter Diamandis. Peter is a futurist. He's a technology genius. He's got corporations that work with other companies on how to take them into the future. He's got so many ideas about the big processes and thinking. He's worked with all the .coms, been through all of those eras, been through so many different companies. And Peter is really, he nailed it on this one. And it's not a new book. This is 2000, I think 17 or 18. But he talks about the fact that one technology in one industry that becomes a breakthrough in that industry. And then there's another breakthrough in a completely different place, different space, that suddenly those two things getting together create a new possibility. That there's so many things where the reason that flying cars have been possible for years, but not really probable or really viable, is because gasoline was the engine, and that was the place that they were, that's where they were getting their fuel. Well, that's heavy. So how do you keep that up when you've got this small vehicle, not a giant jet with wings and air friction and all that to lift? How do you do that with a flying car? So now we've got ways of doing power with less than gasoline. And so suddenly we've got that. By the way, we also have the fact that we'll have driverless craft like that, the flying cars. Why? Because we have driverless cars. So again, technology comes from different places, all merges together and becomes a whole new possibility, a whole new industry potentially, but certainly a whole new possibility. And that's what I want you to be focused on. How can you use these various things that you've heard are out there? And again, we've got a gig economy. We've got people who live in many places around the world who have great talents, resources for us that could be very powerful. They don't cost as much. We don't have to have a full-time staff. We don't need to go hire a whole team. We can hire the pieces and the parts. That in itself is a new technology. A technology is just a different way of doing things. It doesn't have to do with, what we think of as tech. Technology is a different way of doing things. And when you've got a different way of doing things, and you got another different way of doing things, and another way of doing different things, or doing things differently, and you got another one, and you add them together or bring them together in pieces and parts. And if we stack them, this wasn't available till this became possible. But now that that's possible, this becomes another piece. What could you do? How would you beat you? How would you build it today? Go back to the questions. Remember, this is what we're here for: innovation to domination. The future's faster than you think. There's my buddy Peter. Say hello. All right, so here's the final pieces here. It's time for reinvention. In what areas? All areas. Let me throw out some possibilities for you. I want you right now to take each one of these down and stop and think about where the innovation is in your business model, just the way you do business. The idea between how you get clients, what's possible. Are you stuck in a space? Do you need certain things because you've always needed them? I know people that freaked out when real estate went from a multiple listing book to an MLS system that was online. Oh my gosh, we can't do it that way. We need the book. We got to have the book. And by the way, when it went to the internet and became available to everybody, how many people freaked out and said, you can't give them that information? That's our information. Well, it's not. It belongs to the public. And now what's our value proposition? So I want you to be really thinking, how is my business model in relation to what's possible today? How would I innovate in my model, the model itself? Where's the limitations? Where's the expenses that are just redundant when you consider? Where's the stuff that just doesn't have to happen that way anymore? Next, your business process. So think about it. Every little piece from the time you take in a possible client, you meet somebody at a grocery store, you exchange information. How does that get into your database? Do you have a database? What's that process? How do you go from a buyer into showings through to offer to closing to beyond? That's a process. What does that look like in the new world? Seller, same thing. What's your processes? Expireds, FSBOs, anything that even from the old can be brought forward, but how do you do it today? And then of course, what's the team concept? I know people that have 15, 20 people on their team. Is that necessary? Is that the best way to go? I know people that have huge teams, huge volumes, and almost no profit left after it's all said and done because they didn't think through that part. All they thought was big is good. I need to be bigger than everybody else. And by the way, I get all these accolades and applause. Well, that's wonderful, but your banker applauding would be even better. So think through the team concept. What do you really need? Do you need one buyer's agent? Do you need two? Do you need virtual assistants? Do you need, what's the marketing look like for that? Where do you get that work? Reinvent the team. Don't follow the old models. There's plenty of books on how the team is formed, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's wonderful, but that's old news. That's old methodology, old ways. What's the modern day version of that? What can you do today that you could not before? Turn it off and write it down. Things that are popping in your brain. What else? What else? What else? Your marketing strategy. Oh my gosh, when I think about the difference in what was possible in 1986 versus 1996 versus 2006, radical changes. 2016, and here we are in the 2020s. And what's possible is so different in marketing. So many more opportunities. The bad news is so many more options that it's confusing. But the reality is there's power in that, right? If we discover, if we learn, if we understand, and then how do we get to retarget people? How do we, there's so much richness, so many amazing possibilities for taking dollars that used to work for this much. And today those same dollars work for this much. Right? You to many through better strategies. And then, of course, how do you innovate you? How do you improve you? How do you change you? How do you increase your possibilities, your mental capacity? If you haven't listened to Think Big, Live Big, how to build an undefeatable mindset. If you haven't listened to that, I've got it. It's almost 2 hours. If you haven't seen that, get it, because that will help you with this. How do you boost you? How do you get the blocks out of the way that hold you back? How do you get the pieces and parts of your business that you just never have mastered? How do you really face the future starting today? How do you really innovate and create new opportunities in the vision of a future that's never been possible, but is possible today? Not for them, for you. All right. Thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up. I look forward to having you in other programs we do. Don't forget to get into our 6 to 7 figure real estate coaching secrets program. It's on Facebook, actually, not the program, but just go in, join that in Facebook. Love to have you in there. And guys and gals, thanks for showing up today. Stop, figure this out. You have a chance today to do things you've never done before if you allow yourself to think thoughts you've never had before. And hopefully I was able to pour into the computer brain of yours and pour some new ideas in that will allow you to expand. I look forward to having you another time.